The warships arrived on a Tuesday, which seemed almost insulting in its ordinariness. Dr. Elena Vasquez remembered thinking that invasions should at least have the courtesy to happen on weekends when fewer people had meetings scheduled. She stood in the United Nations Emergency Command Center, coffee growing cold in her hand, watching the holographic display paint humanity's doom in elegant red vectors. 3,000 alien vessels had materialized at the edge of the solar system, arranged in a formation so precise it looked like computer-generated art. Beautiful, really, if you ignored the part where each ship carried enough firepower to glass a continent. The room smelled of recycled air, nervous sweat, and the particular desperation that comes from watching your species become obsolete in real time. Generals barked orders into headsets. Politicians argued in hushed clusters. Somewhere a phone kept ringing, ignored, as though whoever was calling couldn't possibly have worse news than what everyone already knew. Elena simply sipped her terrible coffee and waited, because waiting was the only protocol that made sense anymore. The Krev Dominion had sent their message 3 hours ago. It was brief, translated through 17 linguistic matrices and utterly devoid of ambiguity. Surrender unconditionally or face extinction. Humanity had 12 hours to comply. Elena set down her cup with deliberate calm. "They're not here yet," she said to no one in particular. The nearest general, a silver-haired man named Patterson who looked like he'd aged a decade since breakfast, turned to her with hollow eyes. "Dr. Vasquez, with respect, they're at the solar system's edge. They'll be at Earth in 46 hours at current speed." Elena smiled, the kind of smile that made junior researchers nervous during thesis defenses. "I know, that's what I mean. They're not here yet." Patterson stared at her as though she'd started speaking in tongues. Around them, the command center continued its choreographed panic, everyone moving with purpose toward an ending no one could change. Or so they thought. Elena walked to the central console and entered her credentials. The system hesitated, scanning her biometrics with paranoid precision before granting access to files so classified they technically didn't exist. She pulled up a document labeled Project Hourglass, and the screen filled with data that would have seemed like science fiction if it hadn't been devastatingly real. Patterson leaned over her shoulder. "What is that?" "Insurance," Elena replied. "Very expensive insurance that we hoped never to claim." Her fingers moved across the haptic interface, pulling up schematics, deployment logs, activation sequences. "When did we build this?" Patterson whispered, his voice carrying the weight of sudden understanding. "We didn't build it," Elena said. "We planted it. There's a difference." The holographic display shifted, overlaying new information onto the approaching Armada. Tiny green markers appeared throughout the enemy formation, thousands of them, scattered like digital confetti through the vast emptiness between stars. Patterson's face went pale. "Those markers, they're inside their ships." "Correct," Elena said. "Inside their hulls, their engine cores, their command centers, their life support systems. We seeded them 19 months ago during the diplomatic exchanges." "How?" Elena turned to face him fully, and her expression carried something between pride and sorrow. "Do you remember when the Krev delegation visited Earth for trade negotiations, when they toured our manufacturing facilities, our universities, our agricultural centers?" Patterson nodded slowly. "We sent them home with gifts, cultural artifacts, technological samples, raw materials they requested, standard diplomatic courtesy." She pulled up another file. What we didn't mention was that every gift, every sample, every handshake contained nanoscale proximity markers, self-replicating, magnetically adhesive, completely inert until activated. The room had gone quiet around them. Other personnel had noticed the shift in Elena's display, the impossible green constellation blooming across their tactical map. Someone whispered a prayer, someone else laughed, the sound brittle and slightly unhinged. Elena continued, her voice steady. The markers spread throughout their ships via air circulation, foot traffic, standard maintenance protocols. They embedded themselves in the molecular structure of their hulls, and they've been waiting, dormant, for a signal that we prayed we'd never need to send. Patterson gripped the console edge. "What happens when you activate them?" Elena met his gaze. "We show them they're already dead. They just don't know it yet." She pulled up the activation interface, a deceptively simple screen with a single confirmation prompt. Her hand hovered over it. "This doesn't destroy their ships," she explained. "It does something worse. It creates a resonance cascade within their hull materials. The ships become structurally unstable at the molecular level. Any attempt to fire weapons, engage engines, or even adjust course will cause catastrophic fragmentation." "They'll be trapped," Patterson breathed. "Perfectly intact prisons," Elena confirmed. "They can communicate, they can breathe, they can watch, but they cannot move, cannot fight, cannot do anything except sit in the darkness and contemplate their mistake." The implications settled over the room like ash after a volcano. This wasn't a weapon. It was a demonstration of something far more terrifying than destructive power. It was proof that humanity had touched their ships, their lives, their very existence long before they'd ever declared war. A voice crackled over the speakers. "Dr. Vasquez, this is Secretary General Morrison. Do you have confirmation of Project Hourglass viability?" Elena keyed the microphone. "Confirmed, sir. All markers are active and responsive. We have complete coverage across their entire fleet. Casualties? 0, unless they force our hand." A long pause, filled with the weight of species-level decisions. Then Morrison's voice returned, harder now, carrying the certainty of someone who'd accepted the unthinkable. "Prepare to transmit. Let's show them what they have surrounded themselves with." Elena's fingers moved across the console, crafting a message that would be transmitted in every language the Krev understood, along with visual data they couldn't possibly misinterpret. The message was simple, almost polite. It read, "To the Krev Dominion Armada, welcome to the solar system. Before you proceed with your planned invasion, we wanted to ensure you understood your current tactical situation. Please see the attached analysis of your hull integrity status." She attached the full schematic data showing every marker, every point of infiltration, every ship in their fleet already compromised beyond salvation. Then she added one final line. "You are not surrounded. You are infected. And we are the cure you cannot afford." The transmission launched on compressed quantum channels, faster than light, impossible to intercept or jam. It would reach the Krev command ship in 4 minutes and 17 seconds. Elena started a timer on her display and leaned back in her chair. Patterson stared at her. "What do we do now?" "Now?" Elena picked up her cold coffee, grimaced, and set it down again. "Now we wait for them to realize that the invasion ended before it began, and we pray they're smart enough to choose survival over pride." The command center held its breath. Somewhere distant, 3,000 alien warships continued their advance toward Earth, their crews unaware that they piloted elaborate coffins, unaware that every breath they took carried particles of their own defeat, unaware that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't bombs or bullets or brilliant strategy. It was patience, foresight, and the willingness to shake hands with enemies while poisoning the ground beneath their feet. The timer counted down. 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, and in the silence between heartbeats, Elena Vasquez wondered if the Krev would understand the message humanity was really sending. We didn't want this war, but we prepared for it anyway. Because hope is lovely, but hope without preparation is just waiting to die. 1 minute, 30 seconds, 10 seconds. The communication channels erupted with incoming transmissions, dozens of them, all from the Krev Armada, all requesting clarification, denying the claims, demanding proof, voices rising in pitch as their sensors confirmed what humanity had told them. Elena activated the ship-wide diagnostic interface and routed it to the main display. Every person in the command center watched as 3,000 Krev warships suddenly lit up with internal warnings, their own systems screaming about structural compromise, resonance patterns, catastrophic, failure imminent if any aggressive action was taken. The Krev Supreme Commander's face appeared on the primary screen, a being that looked like someone had crossed a mantis with a shark and given it the permanent expression of someone who'd just bitten into a lemon. Its mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of severe agitation. "Human diplomats," it hissed, voice translated into clipped English. "This is a violation of every civilized convention of warfare." Elena stepped forward, hands clasped loosely behind her back. Supreme Commander, with respect, you surrounded our planet with an invasion force. Conventions went out the window when you decided our species should kneel or die. The commander's four eyes narrowed simultaneously. You sabotaged our vessels during peace negotiations. We prepared defensive measures during peace negotiations, Elena corrected. There's a meaningful difference. We hoped never to activate them, but you made that choice for us. This is treachery, the commander spat. Elena's expression hardened. No, Commander. Treachery is pretending to negotiate in good faith while planning genocide. What we did was learn from 5,000 years of human history. We learned that peaceful species survive by preparing for war, while aggressive species discover that the prey they chose has teeth. The commander's breathing apparatus flared. You cannot expect us to simply retreat. Actually, Elena said, that's exactly what we expect. You have three options. 1. Retreat immediately and we'll deactivate the resonance markers as you exit the solar system. 2. Attempt to proceed with your invasion, trigger the cascade, and spend your final moments watching your ships disintegrate around you. 3. Attempt to fire on Earth, guarantee your own destruction, and force us to activate the secondary defense measures you haven't even discovered yet. The alien commander recoiled visibly. Secondary measures? Elena smiled without warmth. Commander, did you really think the markers were our only preparation? We're humans. We plan for failure. We build redundancy into redundancy. The markers were just the polite warning. She gestured to Patterson, who pulled up another display. This one showed a network of satellites positioned throughout the solar system, each pulsing with barely contained energy. Those are temporal displacement generators, Elena explained. If you somehow bypass the hull markers, if you somehow manage to fire on our planet, those satellites will create a localized time dilation field around your entire fleet. You'll experience the next 10,000 years in the span of a few seconds. Your ships will age into dust, your crew will become archaeological exhibits, and Earth will be untouched. The Krev commander's mandibles had stopped clicking. It simply stared, the biological equivalent of a system crash. You would weaponize time itself? We would weaponize anything necessary to protect our home, Elena replied. That's what you misunderstood about humanity, Commander. You saw our hospitality and mistook it for weakness. You saw our diplomacy and thought we were soft. But every human civilization that survived long enough to reach the stars did so by being absolutely, ruthlessly practical about violence when violence became necessary. She stepped closer to the screen. Do you know what we call the period of human history when we fought amongst ourselves, with nuclear weapons hanging over our heads? We call it the Cold War. Do you know why it stayed cold? Because everyone understood that launching first meant dying second. Mutually assured destruction. We lived with that tension for decades. We're very, very good at it. The command center had gone completely silent. Even the background hum of electronics seemed muted, as though the machines themselves were holding their breath. The Krev commander's breathing slowed. When it spoke again, its voice carried a different quality. Not submission exactly, but recognition. The sound of a predator realizing it had cornered something far more dangerous than itself. You planned this entire scenario. We planned for 37,000 scenarios, Elena corrected. This was scenario 4,812. Frankly, we expected you'd try negotiation first. You surprised us by jumping straight to invasion. That was almost refreshing in its honesty. What do you want from us? The commander asked. Elena glanced at Patterson, then at the Secretary General's feed, receiving a small nod. We want you to leave. We want you to tell every species in your dominion what happened here. We want you to explain that Earth is not available for conquest, not now, not ever. And we want you to understand something very important. She leaned forward slightly. Humanity doesn't want to be your enemy. We'd much prefer to be your trading partner, your cultural exchange, your ally against actual threats. But if forced to choose between friendship and survival, we will choose survival with such overwhelming commitment that you'll wish you'd never heard of our species. The commander's eyes cycled through several colors, an expression Elena's xenopsychology training suggested was deep thought mixed with existential dread. "And if we refuse, then you'll die," Elena said simply. "Not because we're cruel, but because we're thorough. And then the next species that considers invading Earth will find your ships floating dead in space as a warning. We'll turn your Armada into a monument to poor decision-making." The silence stretched for long seconds. Finally, the commander's mandibles clicked once, a gesture their translators rendered as acknowledgement. "We will withdraw." "Excellent choice," Elena said. "Begin your retreat and we'll start deactivating the markers as you cross the heliopause. You'll be free and clear within 72 hours. "And the temporal satellites?" "Those stay," Elena said firmly. "Consider them a permanent reminder that Earth's solar system is a very bad place to start conflicts." The commander's image flickered. "You have made a powerful enemy today, human." Elena's smile returned, sad and knowing. "Commander, we made a powerful enemy the moment you decided we were weak enough to invade. The difference is, we made sure you couldn't act on it. Safe travels, and please, tell your friends about what happened here. We'd hate to repeat this demonstration." The transmission cut off. The command center remained frozen for exactly 3 seconds before erupting into chaos, but this time it was the chaos of relief, of celebration, of people who'd been holding their breath for hours, finally remembering how to exhale. Patterson slumped against the console. "Dear God, we actually did it." Elena nodded slowly, watching the tactical display as the Krev ships began adjusting course, the massive Armada slowly, reluctantly turning away from Earth like a tide reversing under some invisible moon's pull. "We did," she agreed, "but we need to understand what we've started here." Patterson looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean, we just revealed capabilities that will terrify every spacefaring species within 100 light years," Elena said. "The nanoscale infiltration alone rewrites the rules of diplomacy. Every delegation that visits Earth from now on will wonder what we're putting in their ships, their suits, their bodies. Trust just became exponentially harder." "So what do we do?" Elena pulled up a new file, one labeled Post-Contact Protocols, and began typing rapidly. "We create transparency frameworks. We offer to share the marker deactivation codes as proof of good faith. We propose multilateral treaties about acceptable defensive measures, and most importantly, we keep building redundancies because the next species that comes looking for a fight will have studied what we did here." She paused, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "But we also extend genuine friendship. We show them that Earth is far more valuable as an ally than as an enemy. We prove that the species clever enough to trap an Armada before it arrives is also clever enough to solve problems that benefit everyone." Patterson managed a weak smile. "Speak softly and carry a really disturbing stick." "Something like that," Elena agreed. The holographic display showed the Krev fleet accelerating away now, their retreat gaining momentum as though they couldn't leave fast enough. The green markers throughout their ships pulsed once in perfect synchronization, a final reminder that humanity's reach extended farther than visible weapons could convey. Elena saved her protocols and closed the file. Across the command center, people were embracing, crying, laughing with the manic energy of those who'd glimpsed extinction and somehow sidestepped it. Secretary General Morrison appeared on the main screen, his aged face carrying relief and weariness in equal measure. "Dr. Vasquez, on behalf of Earth and every human being alive, thank you." Elena inclined her head. "I was just the one holding the trigger, sir. Thousands of scientists, engineers, and strategists made this possible. They're the ones who deserve thanks." "They'll get it," Morrison promised. "But right now, I need to know, are there other scenarios we need to prepare for? Other threats we haven't anticipated?" Elena considered the question carefully. "Sir, there are always other threats. The universe is vast and we're still learning its rules. But what we proved today is that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our technology. It's our willingness to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." "That's both reassuring and terrifying," Morrison said. "It's survival," Elena replied, "and survival has never been pretty." The transmission ended, Patterson had moved to a side console and pulled up long-range sensor data. The markers are deactivating on schedule. They'll be clear in 60 hours at current rate. Good, Elena said. Make sure the Krev know we're keeping our word. Trust has to start somewhere. She walked to the viewing window overlooking the darkened city below. Somewhere out there, 8 billion people were going about their lives, most of them still unaware how close they'd come to annihilation. That was probably for the best. The weight of that knowledge was heavy enough shared among those in this room. Patterson? Yes? Make sure Project Hourglass gets properly archived. Full documentation, ethical review, the works. If we're going to use these methods, we need to understand the moral cost. You think there was a moral cost? Elena turned to face him. We infected diplomatic guests with dormant weapons and used them as hostages. Yes, there was a moral cost. The fact that it saved 8 billion lives doesn't erase that cost. It just means we decided some costs are worth paying. She moved back to the console and pulled up casualty projections, the ones they'd run before activating the markers. The numbers were staggering. Estimated human losses in a conventional defense, 3 billion in the first week. Estimated Krev losses in conventional combat, 400 million. Total projected conflict duration, 8 years. Species survival probability, 42%. These numbers, she said quietly, these are what we prevented. 3 billion lives, 8 years of war, the probable extinction of human civilization. Against that, the moral ambiguity of our methods seems almost quaint. Patterson studied the projections, his face grave. Do you think the Krev will honor the retreat? I think they'll honor it because they understand we gave them the only exit ramp available, Elena said. They chose survival. Most species do when survival becomes the obvious choice. The command center had settled into a new rhythm now, less panicked, more methodical. Analysts tracked the retreating fleet, communications officers maintained open channels with the Krev command ship. Medical teams stood down from emergency protocols. Everything was returning to something approaching normal, though everyone in the room understood that normal had fundamentally changed. Earth had been tested, Earth had responded, and the galaxy would never see humanity quite the same way again. Elena poured herself a fresh coffee from the break room dispenser, still terrible, but at least it was hot. She stood alone for a moment, letting the warmth seep into her hands, feeling the exhaustion that came from making decisions that affected billions. Dr. Vasquez? She turned to find a young analyst, couldn't have been more than 25, with wide eyes and an uncertain expression. Yes? I just wanted to say, what you did today, I have a family in Mumbai. My parents, my sister, her kids, they're alive because of Project Hourglass, because of you. Thank you. Elena felt something crack in her chest, the professional distance she'd maintained crumbling slightly. Thank you for telling me that. Remember their faces. Remember why we do this work. It's not about being clever or powerful. It's about protecting the people we love. The analyst nodded, eyes bright, and returned to his station. Elena sipped her coffee and allowed herself one moment of pure, uncomplicated relief. They'd done it. Against astronomical odds, against an enemy with vastly superior numbers, against every expectation and conventional wisdom, humanity had won without firing a shot. The irony wasn't lost on her. The species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare had just won its first interstellar conflict through preparation, infiltration, and the sheer audacity of turning enemies into unwitting carriers of their own defeat. Patterson appeared beside her. I've been thinking about what you said, about transparency and treaties. And I think you're right. We need to show the galaxy that Earth can be trusted, even after this, maybe especially after this. Elena nodded. Draft a proposal. Something that establishes protocols for defensive measures, limitations on infiltration tactics, verification systems. Make it robust enough that other species will feel safe engaging with us. That's going to be complicated. Everything worth doing is complicated, Elena said. The alternative is remaining isolated, feared, constantly watching for the next invasion. I'd rather be complicated and connected than simple and alone. They stood together, watching the tactical display as the Krev Armada continued its retreat, 3,000 ships that had come to conquer and were leaving as a cautionary tale. The green markers pulsed in diminishing intensity as the deactivation protocols took hold, each pulse a small promise kept, each fading signal a gesture toward the trust that would have to be rebuilt. "Do you think they'll be back?" Patterson asked. Elena considered the question. "Not the Krev, no. They've learned their lesson, but others? Eventually. The galaxy is full of species, and not all of them will believe the warnings. Some will think they're smarter, stronger, luckier. Some will convince themselves that humanity's tricks only work once. And when they come," Elena's smile was gentle but carried an edge sharp enough to cut starlight. "When they come, we'll show them that we've had time to prepare even more creative solutions, because that's what humans do. We learn, we adapt, and we make sure that every threat we survive teaches us how to survive the next one." The coffee was going cold again, but Elena didn't mind. She raised the cup in a silent toast to the retreating Armada, to the 8 billion people who would never know how close they'd come, to the thousands of scientists who'd made the impossible routine, and to the fundamental human stubbornness that refused to accept extinction as inevitable. "To survival," she murmured. Patterson raised his own cup. "To being thorough." Their cups clinked together with a sound too small to echo, but meaningful enough to carry the weight of a species that had just announced its arrival on the galactic stage in the most unexpected way possible. Not with conquest, not with destruction, but with a demonstration that humanity's true genius was patience, preparation, and the willingness to shake hands with monsters while already holding the keys to their cages. The Krev Supreme Commander sat in the silence of his command chamber, mandibles still, 4 eyes fixed on the sensor data that confirmed everything the humans had claimed. The markers throughout his fleet pulsed in perfect synchronization, a heartbeat that wasn't his own, a rhythm imposed by creatures he'd dismissed as primitive. His tactical officer approached cautiously. "Supreme Commander, the withdrawal is proceeding smoothly. The humans are deactivating the devices as promised." "Of course they are," the commander said quietly. "They already won. There's no tactical advantage in betraying us now." "Sir?" "They're teaching us," the commander explained, "showing us that they keep their word even when holding absolute power. It's psychological warfare continued past the battlefield. They want us to remember not just their capabilities but their restraint." The tactical officer's antenna twitched nervously. "It's effective, sir." "It's brilliant," the commander corrected, "and terrifying. Do you understand what they did? They didn't just trap our fleet, they trapped it before we even decided to invade. Every strategic model we have, every tactical framework, every conventional understanding of warfare, all of it is obsolete. They've invented a new paradigm." He pulled up the diplomatic records, images of human delegates smiling, shaking appendages, offering gifts, the entire time knowing those gifts carried dormant weapons. "We thought we were humoring primitives. We were actually walking into an invisible cage and locking ourselves inside." "What do we report to the Dominion Council?" the tactical officer asked. The commander was quiet for a long moment, watching the stars drift past as his armada accelerated away from Earth. Finally, he spoke. "We report the truth. Earth is not to be invaded. Not now, not ever. Any species that tries will discover what we learned today. That the humans are not powerful because they have better weapons. They're powerful because they think 6 moves ahead and make every handshake a potential checkmate. The Council won't like that assessment. The Council can dislike it from the safety of their chambers," the commander said. "I'm the one who nearly killed 3 million crew members by underestimating creatures who smile while planning your destruction. My report will be very, very clear. Earth is off limits, permanently." The tactical officer saluted and withdrew. The commander remained alone, watching the sensor data as the green markers faded one by one, humanity keeping its promise, humanity being magnanimous in victory, humanity proving that they could be far more dangerous as friends than enemies. He activated a personal log, something that would never be part of official reports. "Personal notation," he began. "Today I learned that the most dangerous species isn't the one with the biggest weapons. It's the one that makes you grateful when they choose not to use them." Earth has announced itself to the galaxy, and we were their announcement. We came as conquerors and leave as cautionary tales. Perhaps that was their plan all along. Perhaps they needed a demonstration, a proof of concept to broadcast to every species watching. If so, it worked. I will spend the rest of my life ensuring no one forgets what happened here. Not because I fear humans, though I do, but because I respect them. And species you respect are the ones you keep alive. He ended the recording and leaned back in his command throne, feeling every one of his cycles weighing on him. Somewhere behind him, Earth continued spinning, 8 billion humans going about their lives, perhaps celebrating, perhaps unaware, all of them protected by minds that thought in time frames and contingencies that made his species' vaunted strategic genius look like amateur fumbling. The Krev had thought themselves apex predators. They'd discovered they were merely the first test case, and in the vast cosmic dark, that realization was more humbling than any military defeat could ever be. Back on Earth, 3 days had passed since the Krev withdrawal. The world had been informed, carefully, through measured press releases and reassuring statements from world leaders. The story had been simplified, sanitized, made digestible for populations that still struggled with the concept of alien life, let alone alien warfare. Project Hourglass remained classified. The temporal satellites remained classified. What the public knew was this: aliens had come, humanity had negotiated, and the aliens had left peacefully. It was technically true in the way that saying the surgery was successful is technically true even when it involved removing half your organs. Elena stood in the newly established Office of Interstellar Relations, a department that hadn't existed a week ago and now commanded a budget that made defense contractors weep with envy. The office occupied 3 floors of what used to be an insurance building in Geneva, hastily converted with the kind of speed that only existential threats can motivate. She was reviewing diplomatic proposals when her assistant, a sharp woman named Keiko, who'd been pulled from the Japanese Foreign Ministry, knocked on the doorframe. "Dr. Vasquez, we have an incoming transmission. It's not Krev." Elena's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. "Who is it?" "They're calling themselves the Velen Concordat, mid-tier power, according to our xenopolitical databases, known for being cautious. They want to talk about establishing formal relations." Elena set down her cup. "That was fast." "Word travels," Keiko said. "Apparently the Krev commander has been very forthcoming about what happened. Multiple species are requesting dialogue." Elena pulled up the Velen data, a species that looked like someone had given dolphins opposable thumbs and a deep interest in mathematics. Peaceful trading culture, 3 colony worlds, known for being scrupulously honest in negotiations. "Put them through to conference room 3. And Keiko, get me a full team. Xenolinguist, cultural attaché, security analyst, and someone from the Hourglass Project. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." 20 minutes later, Elena sat across from a holographic projection of Ambassador Thelen, a Velen whose skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns that her briefing materials indicated signified respectful curiosity. "Dr. Vasquez," Thelen's voice came through smooth, translated instantly. "Thank you for accepting our communication. The Velen Concordat wishes to extend greetings to humanity and to express our desire for peaceful relations." Elena smiled, genuine warmth mixed with diplomatic caution. "Ambassador Thelen, Earth is honored by your contact. We welcome the opportunity to establish dialogue." Thelen's luminescence shifted, patterns flowing like water. "We must be direct, Dr. Vasquez. The Concordat has heard accounts of the Krev incident. The reports are concerning." "I imagine they are," Elena said carefully. "May I ask what specifically concerns you?" "The infiltration protocols," Thelen said, and there was no hostility in the words, only honest worry. "The Concordat prides itself on open exchange. Many species visit our worlds. The thought that any delegation might carry dormant weapons, this creates significant anxiety." Elena had been expecting this. She'd spent the last 3 days preparing for exactly this conversation, knowing it would come from someone, grateful it was coming from a species known for rationality. "Ambassador, I understand your concern. It's valid. What happened with the Krev was complicated. But I want to be absolutely clear about something. She leaned forward slightly, making sure her body language conveyed sincerity even across the holographic medium. Earth does not, and will not, routinely infiltrate diplomatic partners with weapons. The Krev situation was unique. They had threatened humanity 17 times over 3 years. We had credible intelligence suggesting invasion plans were imminent. The markers were a defensive measure, specifically tailored to a specific threat. Thelan's patterns rippled. And how can other species trust this? How can we know that Earth won't deem us threatening? You can't, Elena admitted, and the honesty seemed to surprise the Velen. Not with complete certainty, but that's true of any relationship between spacefaring species. The Concordat could have hidden weapons capabilities, so could Earth, so could any species with access to technology. Trust isn't about absolute certainty, it's about demonstrated behavior over time. She pulled up a prepared document and shared it to Thelan's display. This is a proposal we're offering to all species interested in formal relations. It establishes protocols for diplomatic exchanges, including mutual security inspections, technology verification systems, and third-party oversight. It's not perfect, but it creates accountability. Thelan studied the document, luminescent patterns accelerating as they processed information. This is unusually comprehensive and unusually restrictive toward Earth. It has to be, Elena said. Earth just demonstrated capabilities that frighten people, rightfully so. If we want to be part of the galactic community, not just feared but trusted, we need to accept more scrutiny than we might prefer. We're the newcomers. The burden of proof is on us. The Velen was quiet for a long moment. This is not the response we anticipated. What did you anticipate? Elena asked. Arrogance, Thelan said simply. A species that defeated the Krev without firing a shot, we expected demands, not proposals. We expected Earth to leverage its demonstrated power. Elena smiled sadly. Ambassador, Earth has spent most of its history making that exact mistake. We've learned, painfully, that power without wisdom leads to disaster. We don't want to be the species everyone fears. We want to be the species everyone calls when there's a problem that needs solving. Thelan's patterns shifted to something the translation software labeled as cautious optimism. The Concordat would like to proceed with establishing relations, carefully, with verification protocols. We wouldn't have it any other way, Elena said. Careful is smart. We respect smart. The conversation continued for another hour, covering trade possibilities, cultural exchange programs, joint research initiatives. By the end, Elena had the framework for Earth's first genuine interstellar treaty with a species that hadn't threatened. Humanity first. When the transmission ended, her team sat back with collective exhales. The xenolinguist, a professor named Chen who'd been studying theoretical alien languages for 20 years before getting to use them for real, spoke first. That went better than expected. That went better than we deserved, Elena corrected. The Velen are being remarkably gracious considering we just revealed ourselves as the species that weaponizes hospitality. The security analyst, a former intelligence officer named Marcus, tapped his stylus against his tablet. The Krev commander is still broadcasting, by the way. He's giving speeches. We're trending on 17 different species information networks. What's he saying? Elena asked. Marcus pulled up a translated excerpt. Quote, humanity is not an enemy to be conquered, but a mirror to be learned from. They prepared for war while hoping for peace. They demonstrated the capacity for total victory while choosing restraint. Any species that ignores their example deserves the consequences. End quote. Elena stared at the text. He's positioning us as a cautionary tale and a success story simultaneously. It's brilliant, Keiko said. He's saving face while spreading exactly the message we'd want spread. He makes himself look wise for retreating while making everyone else afraid to test us. Unintentionally brilliant or intentionally brilliant? Elena wondered aloud. Does it matter? Marcus asked. Either way, it's working in our favor. Elena stood and walked to the window overlooking Geneva. The city sprawled below, humans going about their lives, the same species that had nearly gone extinct 3 days ago now arguing about parking regulations and restaurant reviews. It matters because it tells us whether the Krev commander is an ally or just a temporarily neutralized threat, she said. If he's smart enough to see the mutual benefit in cooperation, we might have just made Earth's first powerful friend. If he's just scared, that fear will fade eventually. Want me to reach out? Marcus offered. Unofficial channels, gauge his intentions? Not yet, Elena decided. Let him have space to process what happened. Forcing contact too soon might feel like we're gloating or threatening. Give it 2 weeks, then send feelers. Quiet ones. Frame it as academic curiosity about Krev culture. She returned to her desk, where 16 more requests for diplomatic contact waited in her queue. Species she'd never heard of, governments spanning dozens of light years, all suddenly very interested in talking to the humans who'd turned an invasion into a teaching moment. We're going to need more people, she muttered. We're going to need an entire city of diplomats at this rate. Keiko was already typing. I've got recruitment protocols ready. We're pulling from every diplomatic corps, every anthropology department, every negotiation consultancy on Earth. Within 3 months, we'll have 500 people, trained in basic Xeno protocol. Make it 1,000, Elena said, and diversity is critical. I want representatives from every continent, every culture. If we're speaking for humanity, we need to actually represent humanity. The next weeks blurred into a rhythm of constant contact. The Velen Treaty was finalized, establishing Earth's first interstellar embassy on a neutral station at the edge of Concordat space. The Hycery Collective, a hive-minded species that communicated through chemical signals, reached out expressing fascination with human individuality. The Tertian Assembly, known for their philosophical bent, wanted to discuss human ethics and moral frameworks. Each contact brought new challenges, new protocols to learn, new ways to accidentally insult someone by using the wrong greeting gesture. But they also brought opportunity, trade agreements, technology exchanges, cultural programs. Earth was integrating into galactic civilization at a pace that made historians dizzy trying to document it. And through it all, Project Hourglass sat in its classified archives, a reminder of what humanity could do when pushed to the edge. Elena made sure every new diplomat received a briefing on it, not the technical details, but the ethical implications. She wanted them to understand the cost of the peace they were now building. 1 month after the Krev withdrawal, Elena received a personal message through encrypted channels. The sender identification made her pause. Supreme Commander Zareth, Krev Dominion. She opened it alone in her office, curious and cautious in equal measure. The message was brief, translated into flawless English. Dr. Vasquez, I write this not as a military commander but as a person who learned a difficult lesson at great cost to my pride and the safety of my crew. I wanted you to know that I spoke truthfully in my reports, not because I fear your species, though I do, but because I respect what you accomplished. You gave me the opportunity to save millions of lives by swallowing my pride. That is a gift, even if it felt like a defeat. I am now serving as an advisor to the Dominion Council on interspecies relations. My primary recommendation has been simple. Learn from Earth, study their methods, adopt their habit of preparing for war while working for peace. Some council members resist. They call me weak, corrupted by human influence. Perhaps they are right, or perhaps I am the first Krev to understand that true strength is knowing when not to fight. I do not ask for friendship. The distance between our species may be too great, but I offer respect. And in my culture, respect given is honor received. The stars are large enough for both our peoples. Let us fill them with cooperation rather than conflict. Safe travels, Dr. Vasquez, and please, thank your team for their restraint. They could have humiliated us utterly. They chose not to. That choice matters more than you might realize. The message ended with a traditional Krev seal of sincerity, a cryptographic signature that couldn't be faked. Elena read it 3 times, feeling something heavy lift from her chest. They had done it. Not just survived, not just won, but created the foundation for something better. She composed a careful reply, taking her time to get the tone exactly right. Supreme Commander Zareth, your message is received with gratitude and respect. What happened between our species was difficult, but difficulty often teaches lessons that comfort never could. You faced an impossible choice and made the right one. That takes more courage than any battle. Earth welcomes your perspective on the Dominion Council. The galaxy needs voices that understand both strength and restraint. If you believe there are opportunities for Krev-human cooperation, even small ones, we are open to exploring them. Trade, research, cultural exchange, all possibilities. The markers are gone. The temporal satellites remain, but they were never meant for you specifically. They're insurance against a hostile galaxy. Perhaps over time, as cooperation grows, such insurance can be reduced. Trust takes time to build. We have time. Thank you for your words. They mean more than you might realize. In respect and hope, Dr. Elena Vasquez. She sent it and leaned back, staring at the ceiling of her office. Keiko appeared in the doorway. You look contemplative. Good news or bad news? Good news pretending to be complicated, Elena said. The Krev commander reached out, personally. Keiko's eyebrows rose. That's unexpected? The best things usually are, Elena said. She stood, grabbed her jacket, and checked her watch. I'm taking the rest of the day off, for the first time in 5 weeks. If the galaxy collapses, try to handle it without me for 8 hours. Where are you going? Home, Elena said, to remind myself what we were protecting. She left the office, took the elevator down to ground level, and stepped out into Geneva's autumn afternoon. The air smelled of coffee, rain, and the particular urban mixture of exhaust and humanity that she'd never quite appreciated before. People rushed past, completely absorbed in their own dramas, their own concerns, blessedly unaware that they'd been hours away from extinction. Elena bought a pastry from a street vendor, sat on a bench near the lake, and watched ducks argue over breadcrumbs. An elderly man sat down beside her, tossing bits of baguette to the birds. Beautiful day, he said in French. Elena replied in the same language. It is. You look tired, he observed. Big job? Something like that, she said. Important work? Elena watched a duck successfully steal bread from 3 others, victorious in a battle that mattered intensely to ducks and not at all to the universe. I hope so. We're trying to make sure everyone can keep having days like this, beautiful, ordinary days where the biggest drama is duck politics. The old man chuckled. That sounds like very important. Work indeed. They sat in comfortable silence, feeding ducks, watching the lake shimmer under autumn sun. The old man eventually shuffled off with a friendly nod, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and the birds. Her phone buzzed, a message from Patterson. The Tertian Assembly wants to establish a permanent cultural exchange. They're offering to teach us their philosophical frameworks in exchange for human literature. Apparently, they're fascinated by the concept of fiction. Elena smiled and typed back. Approve it, but make sure they start with comedies. If they're going to understand humanity, they should know we laugh at ourselves constantly. She finished her pastry, brushed the crumbs off her lap, and stood. The ducks watched her expectantly, hoping for more food. Sorry, friends, I'm out, but I promise the galaxy won't end today. That's got to count for something. The ducks, unimpressed, returned to their own politics. Elena walked back toward the office, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The work would continue. More species would make contact. More treaties would be negotiated. More challenges would emerge. But for now, in this moment, Earth was safe, expanding into the stars not through conquest, but through careful, deliberate, occasionally terrifying diplomacy.